I didn't know the standing ovation at the end of my husband's financial responsibility seminar would turn into a crowd of angry students demanding their money back while sheriff's deputies served him with lawsuit papers. My name is Liliana Reyes, and for 3 years I believed my husband was a financial genius helping families build wealth while he was secretly destroying ours with debts I didn't know existed. Sebastian started his financial coaching business in 2021. He had been working in banking for years, had certifications in financial planning, understood money in ways I never would. He said he wanted to help people, wanted to teach families how to budget, save, invest, build generational wealth. He called his company Secure Futures Financial Education, ran seminars at community centers and libraries, charged $300 per family for a 6-week course on financial literacy. People loved him. He had testimonials on his website from families who said he'd changed their lives, helped them pay off debt, build emergency funds, start retirement accounts. I was proud of him. We'd been married 8 years, and this felt like his calling. He'd work his banking job during the day and teach seminars 3 evenings a week. He'd come home energized, talking about the families he was helping, how one couple had paid off $15,000 in credit card debt using his methods, how another had saved their first $1,000 ever. He showed me thank you cards people sent. I watched him transform people's relationships with money, and I felt lucky to be married to someone doing such meaningful work. Our own finances seemed solid. Sebastian handled everything, paid the bills, managed our accounts, filed our taxes. He said it was easier for him to do it since he was the expert. I worked as a nurse at a pediatric clinic, brought home decent money, but Sebastian made more between his banking salary and the seminar income. He showed me spreadsheets sometimes, our retirement accounts growing, our emergency fund healthy, our debt minimal. He'd explain his strategies, use terms I didn't fully understand, and I'd nod along, trusting he knew what he was doing. We lived modestly. Nice apartment, but not extravagant, used cars, reasonable vacations. Sebastian said living below our means was the key to building wealth, that the families struggling financially were the ones trying to keep up with neighbors, buying things they couldn't afford. We were smarter than that. We were disciplined. Except we weren't. Sebastian was. I was just uninformed. The first crack appeared in April 2024. I got a phone call at work from someone claiming to be from a collections agency. They said I was 30 days past due on a credit card payment. Asked when I could bring the account current, I told them they had the wrong person. I didn't have a credit card with that company. The woman on the phone read me the account number, the billing address, which was our apartment, and said the card was in my name, joint account with Sebastian Reyes. I hung up thinking it was a scam, but something about it bothered me all day. When I got home, I asked Sebastian about it. He looked confused, said we didn't have any credit cards. We'd paid ours off years ago, as part of his financial discipline practice. I told him what the caller had said. He said it was definitely a scam, probably identity theft. He'd look into it. He never mentioned it again, and I forgot about it because 2 days later my father had a health scare, and I spent the next month helping my mother navigate hospitals and doctors. Sebastian was supportive, told me to take all the time I needed with my family, that he'd handle things at home. In June, I got another call. Different collections agency, different credit card, same story. Account in my name, jointly with Sebastian, severely past due. This time, I didn't tell Sebastian first. I called the number on my credit card statement, not the collections agency. Asked them to send me detailed account information. They emailed it within an hour. The credit card had been opened 3 years ago. The limit was $15,000. It was maxed out. The minimum payments hadn't been made in 4 months. The charges were all over the place. Cash advances, online gambling sites, luxury purchases, nothing I recognized. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I logged into our bank account, the one Sebastian said he monitored closely, checked our linked credit cards, found two I didn't recognize, both maxed out, both past due. I started searching my name in credit monitoring sites, found 7 credit cards I'd never opened. Total balance across all of them, $93,000. I thought I was going to throw up. I sat on our bathroom floor, trying to breathe, trying to understand how this was possible. Sebastian was a financial educator. He taught people how to avoid debt. How could we have $93,000 in credit card debt I didn't know about? I waited for him to come home from work, confronted him the moment he walked in, showed him the statements, asked him to explain. He went pale, sat down heavily on the couch, said he'd been meaning to tell me, that he'd made some mistakes, that he'd opened the cards for emergencies, but things had gotten out of hand, that he'd been working on paying them down, but it was harder than he'd expected. I asked, what emergencies? What had $93,000 in emergencies looked like? He said business expenses. The seminars cost more to run than he'd anticipated. Marketing, materials, venue rentals. He'd used the cards to cover costs until the revenue caught up, but enrollment had been slower than projected. He was in a temporary cash flow problem. I asked about the gambling charges, the luxury purchases. He said those must be fraudulent, that someone had stolen the card numbers. He'd dispute them. I wanted to believe him, wanted his explanation to make sense, but something felt wrong. I asked to see the business accounts for secure futures. He said they were complicated, that I wouldn't understand the accounting. I said I didn't need to understand accounting. I needed to see where our money was going. He got defensive, said I didn't trust him, that he was the financial expert in this marriage, that he'd been managing money professionally for over a decade, that my questioning him was insulting. We fought. He slept on the couch. In the morning, he apologized, said the stress of the business was getting to him, that he'd show me everything, that we'd work through this together. He never showed me anything. Every time I asked, he had an excuse. The files were at his office. His accountant had the records. He needed to organize them first. Weeks went by. The collection calls kept coming. I started answering them, started learning exactly how bad things were. It wasn't just credit cards. There were personal loans, payday loans, lines of credit, all in my name or jointly with Sebastian. He'd forged my signature on applications, used my social security number, my income, my credit score, which had been excellent before he destroyed it. By July, I'd identified debts totaling $167,000, and I still hadn't seen everything. I hired a forensic accountant. Her name was Octavia Ling, and she specialized in financial fraud cases. I gave her access to everything I could find. She worked for 2 weeks tracing money, reconstructing accounts, following paper trails. When she called me with her findings, her voice was grim. The total debt was $214,000. Sebastian had been systematically opening accounts in my name for 4 years, using the money for gambling, primarily online poker and sports betting. He'd also been using it to fund a lifestyle he'd hidden from me, a second apartment downtown where he stayed some nights claiming he was at seminars, designer clothes he kept in a storage unit, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of. The seminar business was real, but barely breaking even. He was charging families $300 to teach them financial responsibility while he gambled away our future and theirs. Because Octavia found something else. Sebastian had been taking advance payments from students for future seminar series that didn't exist, promising specialized investing courses and advanced budgeting workshops. collecting deposits of $500 to $1,000 per family, never delivering the courses, using the money to cover minimum payments on his debt. It was a pyramid scheme disguised as financial education, using new student deposits to service old debts, and it was all going to collapse the moment students realized the promised courses weren't happening. I felt betrayed and furious and also terrified because I was legally liable for most of this debt. My name was on the accounts. My signature, forged or not, was on the loan documents. My credit was annihilated, and if Sebastian's scheme collapsed publicly, I'd be tied to it. Octavia said I needed to protect myself immediately. File a police report for identity theft and fraud. File for divorce and legal separation of assets. Document everything proving I hadn't known about or authorized the debt. And most importantly, notify the students who'd paid deposits for non-existent courses before Sebastian took more money. I filed the police report first. The detective assigned to the case was sympathetic but blunt. Financial fraud between spouses was complicated. Proving I hadn't known was nearly impossible unless I had clear evidence Sebastian had hidden everything. I showed him my bank access history, showed that I'd been locked out of certain accounts, showed the forged signatures that didn't match my actual signature. He said he'd investigate, but it would take time. I filed for divorce the next day. Sebastian was served at work. He came home that evening furious, said I was overreacting, that we could fix this, that going to the police was a betrayal, that I was destroying our marriage over money problems that could be resolved. I asked him how. How do you resolve $200,000 in gambling debt? He said he was working on it, that he had a plan. I asked what plan. He said he'd been in contact with some investors who were interested in buying secure futures, that he could sell the business, pay off the debts, start fresh. I asked about the students who'd paid deposits for courses that didn't exist. He went quiet. Then he said they'd get their courses, that he was planning to launch them next quarter. I asked how he'd develop and teach courses while working full-time at the bank and managing a debt crisis. He said I was being negative, that I never believed in him, that I was sabotaging his business. I moved out that weekend, stayed with my sister. Filed a restraining order after Sebastian showed up at the clinic where I worked, demanding to talk. The order was granted. Sebastian was required to stay away from me and my workplace. But he still had his seminars, still had students who trusted him, who didn't know their financial advisor was drowning in debt and gambling addiction. Octavia helped me contact the families who'd paid deposits, warned them that the advanced courses might not happen, suggested they request refunds. Most did. Sebastian ignored the refund requests. The families started complaining on social media, writing negative reviews, demanding answers. Sebastian doubled down, announced a special seminar series called Building Generational Wealth, promised to teach families how to create lasting financial security, charged $500 per family, scheduled it for a Saturday in September at a hotel conference room, advertised it heavily, positioned it as his most comprehensive program yet. 40 families signed up, $20,000 in revenue, money Sebastian needed desperately to service his debts. I learned about the seminar from one of the families who'd contacted me asking if it was legitimate. I told them I couldn't say, but that I'd reported Sebastian to the police for financial fraud. The family pulled out, demanded a refund. Sebastian refused. Octavia had an idea. She'd been tracking Sebastian's creditors. The credit card companies, the loan servicers, The families owed refunds from previous canceled courses. She'd contacted several of them, told them Sebastian was running a seminar on September 14th, told them he'd be collecting $20,000 from unsuspecting families, told them if they wanted to serve legal papers or try to collect debts, that would be the time and place to do it. I should have stopped her, should have said it was too cruel. But I thought about the 40 families planning to give Sebastian $500 each, families who needed financial help and were turning to someone who'd teach them responsibility while hiding his own catastrophic irresponsibility. They deserved to know who they were trusting. September 14th arrived. The seminar was scheduled for 9 a.m. I didn't go, couldn't stomach watching, but Octavia went. She posed as an attendee, paid the $500, sat in the back row with her phone recording. She sent me updates throughout. Sebastian started strong, talked about the importance of budgeting, of living below your means, of avoiding debt. The irony was suffocating. He was charming, confident, authoritative. Families took notes, asked questions, believed every word. 2 hours in, during the break, the first creditor arrived. A process server from a credit card company Sebastian owed $67,000 walked right into the conference room, called Sebastian's name, served him with lawsuit papers in front of 40 families. Sebastian tried to laugh it off, said it was a misunderstanding, that his identity had been stolen. The process server left, the families looked uncomfortable, but Sebastian recovered, said this proved his point about protecting your credit and monitoring your accounts. 15 minutes later, another process server, different credit card company, different lawsuit, same public service. Sebastian's face was red now. He tried to continue the seminar, but people were whispering, pulling out their phones. Then a woman stood up, said she'd paid a deposit for an advanced budgeting course 6 months ago. The course never happened. She'd been asking for her refund for 3 months. Sebastian owed her $1,000. She wanted her money now, today. 3 more families stood up, said the same thing. Different courses, different amounts. All owed refunds Sebastian hadn't paid. Sebastian tried to explain, said there were delays, that the courses would be rescheduled, that refunds were being processed. Someone asked when. He said soon. They asked for a specific date. He couldn't give one. Octavia stood up, identified herself as a forensic accountant, said she'd been hired to investigate Sebastian's finances. Said he was currently carrying over $200,000 in personal debt. Said he'd been using deposits from new students to cover debts from old students. Said this seminar was likely another cash grab to service gambling debts. The room erupted, families demanding answers, Sebastian denying everything, calling Octavia a liar, saying this was a setup by his ex-wife who was trying to destroy him. Then the sheriff's deputy arrived. Octavia had also contacted them. Told them about the outstanding debts, the forged documents, the suspected fraud. The deputy asked Sebastian to step outside, asked if he'd be willing to answer some questions about financial irregularities reported by multiple creditors and his spouse. Sebastian refused, said he had a seminar to finish. The deputy said the seminar was over, that families were requesting refunds and leaving, that if Sebastian didn't comply voluntarily, they could do this differently. Sebastian looked around the conference room, at the 40 families who'd trusted him, who were now filming him on their phones, posting to social media, demanding their $500 back. He tried one more time to salvage it, said this was all a misunderstanding, that his wife was mentally unstable and vindictive, that Octavia was lying for money. The deputy asked if Sebastian could prove his wife's claims were false, asked if he could show his financial records. Prove the debts didn't exist. Sebastian said that was private information. The deputies said he could either show proof voluntarily or they'd get a warrant. A man in the front row stood up, said he wanted his $500 back immediately, said if Sebastian couldn't prove his finances were clean, he was a fraud. The entire room agreed. 40 families demanding refunds on the spot. Sebastian didn't have $20,000, didn't have $500. The money they'd paid was already gone, spent servicing debt, covering minimum payments, keeping the house of cards standing for another week. Hotel security arrived, asked Sebastian to leave. He refused, said he'd paid for the conference room, that these people were harassing him. Security said multiple attendees had complained, that the police were involved, that he needed to leave now. The deputy escorted Sebastian out. Octavia recorded the whole thing. Families followed them to the lobby, demanding refunds, calling their banks to dispute the charges, posting reviews online warning others. Within an hour, Sebastian's business was finished, his reputation destroyed, his fraud exposed in the most public way possible. I watched the videos later. Octavia sent me everything. I saw Sebastian's face as the first process server walked in, saw him try to maintain control as his world collapsed. Saw him realize that every lie he'd told was coming due simultaneously, in front of people he'd positioned himself to help, people he'd exploited. He called me that night, screaming, said I'd destroyed him, that I'd orchestrated a public humiliation, that I'd turned people against him. I said I'd told the truth, that his creditors had every right to serve him papers, that the families deserved to know who they were paying, that the only person who destroyed Sebastian was Sebastian. He said I was vindictive, that a wife should protect her husband. I said a husband should protect his wife from $200,000 in secret gambling debt and identity theft. He hung up. The criminal investigation moved forward. The detective had subpoenaed Sebastian's records, found the forged signatures, found the gambling transactions, found the student deposits used to cover personal debts. By October, Sebastian was charged with fraud, identity theft, and running an unlicensed investment scheme. He took a plea deal, 5 years probation, restitution to the families he'd defrauded, repayment of the debts he'd taken in my name, permanent revocation of his financial planning certifications. He couldn't work in banking or financial services ever again. The divorce finalized in December. I wasn't liable for the debts once we proved they were fraudulent. My credit was slowly recovering. I'd changed my name back to my maiden name, started rebuilding my financial life with help from a legitimate financial advisor. Octavia became a friend. She said the seminar confrontation was one of the most satisfying moments of her career, that watching a fraud get exposed in real time in front of his victims was rare, that usually these things happened quietly in courtrooms where the victims never saw justice happen. The families who'd attended that seminar got their money back. The hotel processed refunds after reviewing Octavia's evidence. Some of them sued Sebastian individually. Most just wanted to move on and forget they'd almost been scammed. Sebastian works in sales now for a furniture store, lives in a studio apartment. His wages are garnished for restitution payments. He'll be paying off his debts for the next decade. His social media is gone, his website offline, his reputation as a financial educator destroyed completely. People ask me if I feel guilty about what happened at the seminar, if I regret the public nature of his exposure. I tell them no, because Sebastian had been teaching financial responsibility seminars for 3 years while hiding catastrophic debt, had been taking money from families who needed help and using it to gamble, had been positioning himself as an expert while committing the exact financial sins he warned others against. Those 40 families deserved to know before they handed over $500 each, deserved to see the lawsuits and the creditors and the evidence of fraud before they trusted him with their financial futures. I didn't orchestrate what happened. I just stopped protecting Sebastian from the consequences of his choices, stopped letting him hide behind the facade of the responsible financial educator while he destroyed lives behind the scenes. The creditors served him because he owed them money. The families demanded refunds because he'd taken their deposits and never delivered. The police questioned him because he'd committed crimes. The seminar collapsed because it was built on lies that couldn't survive exposure. I just made sure the exposure happened where it mattered most, not in a quiet courtroom, not in a private settlement, but in front of the people he was actively trying to deceive. The families who would have become his next victims if they didn't see who he really was. Sebastian wanted to teach one more seminar about building generational wealth. Instead, he taught 40 families the most important financial lesson of all, that credentials and confidence don't equal trustworthiness, that financial educators can be frauds, that you should always verify who you're trusting with your money. He just didn't mean to teach that lesson about himself. But sometimes the best education comes from watching what not to do, and Sebastian, standing in that conference room while process servers handed him lawsuits and families demanded their money back, became the perfect cautionary tale. Not the financial expert he pretended to be, just a gambling addict who'd convinced people he could teach them responsibility while he had none himself. And when the truth caught up with him, it didn't happen quietly. It happened during the one seminar he should never have scheduled, the one where 40 families and multiple creditors and a forensic accountant and a sheriff's deputy all showed up to demand answers he couldn't give. I didn't destroy his career. His $200,000 in gambling debt did that. I just made sure it happened in a room full of witnesses so no one else would be fooled, so the families he'd already scammed could see justice. So the facade finally cracked in a way that couldn't be hidden or explained away. Sebastian taught financial responsibility while practicing financial recklessness, and the moment those two realities collided in public, in front of everyone, the fraud couldn't survive. Neither could his marriage, his business, his reputation, his career, all built on the lie that he was someone he wasn't, and all destroyed the moment I stopped believing that lie and started documenting the truth instead.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.